That way there's no delay.
Yep. We're all set to go, right, Mark? 100%?
I am all set.
I have 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call the May 14th Interlake School Board meeting to order. We could stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everybody is in attendance except for Siobhan Connolly, who was absent with notice. Before I open public session, I just want to acknowledge 2 things. We got a very nice thank you card from the 7th grade regarding to the school board regarding their Cape Cod trip, and I'll pass that around. And then we also got a very nice thank you card from the teacher who organizes the Boston trip, which is for 8th graders. It's Wendy Taylor. Thank you, Wendy, for spearheading that effort. And another nice card with pictures, and I'll pass that around. So it's 6:01. I'm going to open public comment. Do we have anything online?
I have no comment online.
Do we have any comment here in the audience? Seeing none, we're going to leave public comment open and roll on to the next item. Mr. Terrio, could you give us a report of our school, please?
So, coming up is prom. That'll be held at Wolfsburg Farm on May 18th. Thanks to Ms. Dubois for all of our hard work and organization for this event. After prom the after prom committee is hosting an after prom party at the community center. Dr. Johnny would like to thank Kristen Fuller, Carolyn Richards, and all of the after prom committee members for their hard work to make this event special. Senior night is June 6th, and seniors' last day of classes is June 7th. April 15th to 18th, we took 48 7th grade students down to Camp Wingate Kirkland in Yarmouthport, Massachusetts. So I think that's the 7th grade thank you card that you had being passed around. They did some team building, community building activities, low ropes course, and a science fair. They also went to Chapin Beach, Coast Guard Beach, and the National Seashore, as well as Cedar Swamp, and got to do tide pooling. And then on May 10th, 8th graders went down to Boston. They went on the Freedom Trail, visited the Prudential Center, and just to discover different landmarks. Took a tour of Faneuil Hall and got to ride on the duck boats for more of Boston's history. And also, Student Council will be hosting Spring Fling coming up on May 24th. We'll be spending some time just outside enjoying nature and playing games like Ultimate Frisbee, kickball, and capture the football, and some other stuff as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Caleb. Next up, when those kids are at Wolfsburg Farm, the nice green field should be really nice and green because I just fertilized it. Next up, we have minutes of the April 9th, 2024 school board meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
should I, before we make a motion, I've got a concern to update the non-public portion of the minutes. I don't know if we can accept both at the same time, if we can accept the public, make a motion to accept the public, update them, make it a non-public.
That's fine, we can do that. Yeah, so we'll just do the public session for now. So moved, is there a second? Seconded by Duncan. Any questions or comments about the public session minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public session are approved. We'll take up non-public once we address the questions in non-public session. Current bills payable.
We have a manifest number on that.
We do, so it's manifest 3024. And then starts on page 10, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
It actually, as I look through this, item 109934, underground storage tank inspection. When I hear that, I think of like gas tanks and gas stations that are getting knocked down, that kind of stuff. Can you shed any light on like, what exactly that is?
So I'm going to guess that it's a propane tank, but I'm happy to look into it
That
and
would
get
make
back to you. Sure.
Oil tanks aren't underground, I don't believe.
I believe we have propane.
Oh, I'm talking, yeah, I'm sure propane would be
Yeah.
underground, but typically not heating oil.
Right,
Yeah.
they're above. So I will look into that one. Sure. Any
Mr.
other
Parsons?
questions?
We do have a cistern that they did work on last year, which is for fire suppression, a large underground water tank. I don't know that that has anything to do with this, but I am aware of that as well. So they did a maintenance to it last summer. So I don't know if this has anything to do with that.
But Ashley will look into it, let us know.
I will.
Great. Did we get a motion yet?
Moved as presented.
Second. Any other questions or comments on manifest? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Payables are done.
Thank you.
Next up, we have our enrollment report. Mrs. Moriarty.
You have the enrollment report in your packet, which is on page 14. And not much change since March. We did do a little investigating into, from, if you notice, December to the March date and the April dates. There was a significant decrease. I did have each principal go back and look, and it's really, we had more move-outs than we had move-ins. And there were people, some who moved out of state, some who moved to other towns within the Lakes region.
Okay.
But nothing.
Do you also get, if somebody decided to homeschool?
Yes, we do. And there were a few homeschool, but the majority were for moving.
For moving out of the
Yeah.
district? Yeah.
Any other questions on the financial,
On the enrollment?
I'm sorry, enrollment report? Still getting used to this new agenda.
I'm gonna have to start raising the child.
All right, so we don't have to vote on that. Financial report, Mrs. Dolph.
So in your packet on page 15 is a year-to-date financial report. Bringing your attention just to above the blue line, our adjusted available balance as of May 10th was $770,000. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
What does, kind of going below the blue line there, in
Sure.
terms of salary and benefits,
Mhm.
what does available mean?
So
Like available for overtime expenditures?
available meaning we have not allocated those dollars. And it is related to, we've had some unfilled positions. And we've also had staffing changes, so related to salary and all of the fixed costs. That's what that is making up.
So salary changes often are on the teacher salary schedule, like people coming in, maybe people who retire at a higher salary that were budgeted because during that time. And then maybe somebody who was lower on that schedule was filled in.
So you would have more available, that's okay. And then in the pending encumbrances expenses, the 102,282. So how does that break out between salary benefits and other than salary benefits?
Sure,
And
so
you accounted for that in the adjusted availability up top.
correct.
It's not broke out down below.
Right, because we have, the way that we've accounted for it, we haven't put in purchase orders for this, these dollars yet because it's anticipated that we'll spend them, but we're not sure because it's dependent upon who puts in for, say, that first one, the coursework and PD reimbursements. Our teachers and paraeducators have this second bite at the apple, is what we call it. They have until a certain date to put in for additional funding for coursework. So if there's additional funds remaining, which there is, they have the opportunity to request additional funding.
And that is for both the para-educators and for teachers. That's part of the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, well, I guess what I'm looking at is if we look at the 102, 282,
Mhm.
you know, and you look at the general fund with available 13,104, presumably like an FBLA trip, 15,000 is part of the general fund other than salary benefits. So if that's already pending encumbrance, then really our adjusted available down there is a negative number. Is that a true statement, or am I reading it incorrectly?
I think it's not a negative balance. So the coursework and the PD would be, that's all related to benefits. The custodian overtime is
The
salary
benefits.
benefits. Yep, and then
What
the
about-
staffing.
What about the FBLA?
So the
No, I mean-
FBLA trip
Sorry,
would,
that's 5,500.
Yep. right.
And just that 13,104 is a tight feeling number. And
Yeah.
the reason it is that tight is the contracted services that we've purchased for a lot of special education needs. They don't fall under salary and benefits, so they've been charged to the other
Contracted service.
parts of the
So what I was saying is 859, 569, and 13,104 don't take into account any of these pending encumbrances and expenses down below. That they have been taken into account just above the blue line there for an adjusted available of 773.91. Is there a reason that we don't take those pending encumbrances into account in the breakout?
I think it's just the manner
It's
we
just the way
established
we
the
broke it
report.
out.
Okay.
You know, I think it can be done differently, but
Other questions?
No, but I'd like to make one comment. This is the 12th time I've sat around the table having this kind of discussion. And having the luxury of seeing how the public reacts to the decisions that we're gonna have to make at this table tonight. They don't ever remember the amount to reduce taxes, or that it even exists.
and that will come under that fund balance.
Okay, anything else? Hearing none, we'll move on to old business. General assurances fiscal year 2025. Mrs. Moriarty.
Last month, the general assurances were shared with the board, and they start on page 16 and go until page 39. Congratulations. 40, right. Nope, 39. Nope, my apologies. Hold on, we got another one document after. 35. My apologies. So they end on page 35, and those are the general assurances that are part of a requirement to sign off, that we are agreeing to those in order to receive entitlement funds, which come from the federal government to the state and get dispersed to local education agencies. And the board chair, what the hope is, the board will take action so that the board chair is able to sign, and myself, which is a requirement.
So we need a motion?
The motion would be to authorize the superintendent and the chairman of the board to sign off on the general assurances.
So moved?
Seconded.
Is there other discussion or questions regarding the general assurances?
There's discussion of a side-by-side comparison.
So we had done
Differences between
that,
this
And they were, it primarily worked out to things were in different sections. There was nothing that was significantly different. But we did do that. We actually took last year's and had a staff member take this year's, and we've been through, and we looked at each change.
Great, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? General assurances, we can sign off.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Region 8 renovation and expansion agreement.
Again, this is the Winnisquam agricultural program, which is evolving into a greater CTE experience, is looking to do a renovation, and part of that does require sending districts to sign off. really the obligation lies with Winnisquam, and the state.
Yeah, we're not writing any checks.
You're not writing any checks. That's an easy one. And we are the last district just based on timing, so I know that they're anxious to get it.
I would move to approve this renovation expansion agreement as presented.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Seconded by Mark. Any other discussion or questions regarding this agreement? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Very good, it is approved. Now we're on to new business. Lunch prices for 24-25.
So in your packet on page 49 is a memo to the board regarding school lunch prices. We used the paid lunch equity tool to come up with the proposed increase for next year. And this does meet the requirement for the Healthy Hungry Free Kids Act. So we are proposing a 25-cent increase for lunch and a 15-cent increase for breakfast. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Could you just explain what that tool is? Just a
Sure.
brief explanation.
So what it does is it calculates where we currently are versus the federal prices, and it tries to bring us closer in line with those prices.
And that's a tool we get from the federal government.
It is.
Any other questions regarding the lunch prices?
How many students get free and reduced lunch? Do we know that?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
I guess what I'm
I
really
think-
asking is how many
we're around
families would be affected? That's the
25%
key.
is a
That's-
percentage.
yeah.
So district-wide, during the budget process, we were around 25% of our student population.
Okay, so if we have 1,000 kids, right?
So it's about 200, right, and we're
So-
about 800 or
Mhm.
so.
so
Well, not
ish,
918 actually,
Right,
so it's a little bit
A
more
little
than
bit
that,
more than that.
ish,
about a quarter.
okay. So, and, you know, maybe I'm making much ado about nothing, but with the price of groceries going up kind of thing over the past all over the last year, like significant. So my finger math tells me that if we're going up 25 cents for lunch and 15 cents for breakfast, or the other way around, forgive me, that's 40 cents a day. That's $2 a week. That's $4 a week if you have 2 kids in the school, $6, blah, 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 kind of thing. Everybody can do some math. As we start to look at what is the effect on a family that may have 3 or 4 kids in the district, like, I guess my question is, what is the worst case scenario effect on a given family? Kind of thing. And again,
Yeah.
$2 a week doesn't sound like a lot, but for some people it could be a lot.
We can certainly run some scenarios and bring them back in June. So the reduced price lunch didn't change, or breakfast or lunch. What it impacts are families who are on the edge that don't qualify. And they're often in our society are often experiencing those increases far more. So we can certainly run a few scenarios, and the challenge is we're required to use that tool.
Yeah.
So it's a tough situation. We did look at, there are some different ways of going for whole school free lunch, but we're not quite at the threshold for that, and there were certainly some, as we were trying to learn about it, some potential extra costs that seemed significant, but it's something worth watching.
I think for those folks that are already on a free lunch program, like, this isn't gonna take them off the free lunch program.
Correct.
My question is how many families, as you say, Mary, that are on edge?
Yeah.
Come into
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
come into the free lunch program, or It's big, I'm sure that put it all in the calculator, it'll come out at some point in time, right? But that's my concern,
Yeah.
watching my grocery bill.
Yeah. Yes, it's staggering. What we can, like, it's difficult, we wouldn't have the economics of everybody, but I think we could look at some scenarios of, like, if you're a family of, you've got 5 kids, here's what it's gonna cost annually. Those are all questions, worth putting out there. Other things, there are ways to maybe subsidize the food service program more than you are already doing. Those are things, maybe during the next budget cycle, or with the unexpended fund balance that you could consider doing as well.
But that would take you would need to do some more
Yeah,
homework.
yes,
So,
yeah.
but we can act on this in June.
You can certainly, this can come back in June. This is really about being in place for next year. So we can bring a few more things to the table in June.
Is everybody good with that? Sure.
I guess I should.
This would affect, so the whole SAU, so like Ashland would be affected, right?
No, Ashland is its own entity.
Okay, I was just wondering if it said the SAU, I wasn't sure. I thought it said SAU, maybe I missed. Okay, all good, that was one question. All right, then relates, okay.
Fine to defend.
Where you said there's.
Theirs gets run through the equity tool as well.
Yeah.
So they act as two separate.
And do we benchmark with the other districts on any of this, or do we just do it on our own? How's that work?
The increase was
So
the same
the
for
increase-
Ashland.
Was the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We proposed the same.
I can't remember if the starting price was the same, but the increase was the same.
So we're required to use the equity tool.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Is there a requirement to come into parity with whatever the federal government says, or is it you just have to use this tool to do your calculations?
I'm pretty sure, and we'll go back and double check the law, but my experience is that this is the tool. And
Right.
what I recollect at one point is seeing some,
Great, so you can't come
Awful
up, you
formula.
can't, you can't do your own math.
yeah, right.
I'm saying is, my question is, what is the instant? Do we have to come into parity with some federal price?
So yes, that is what it is. You're trying to get close, what they want is what you are charging people who are not getting free or reduced lunch is closer to what you are being reimbursed for people who for the meals that the federal government is reimbursing you for free lunch and for a reduced lunch.
So shifting the cost of those free and reduced lunches to those that do that.
They're
And
trying
our
to say, if this is what we're reimbursing you, that's really the cost of the meal, and you should get closer to charging that.
For those, so making up those losses with those kids that are not.
I think it's more of an
Loss.
equity
Right.
thing, that if you're saying if the government is being charged, and I'm just gonna use for simplicity, they're being charged $5 for the meal. And you're selling it to other people for $2.50, you're saying you've gotta get closer. And that's what the tool is designed to say, if your reimbursement is $5, you should be moving towards getting closer to $5.
Okay.
All right?
We'll bring more information.
Yeah.
School lunch is its own amazing,
Amazing, not in a good way.
somehow feeding children healthy meals and supporting families should be easier. And it is definitely not.
All right. So next up, we have anticipated end-of-year fund balance and draft encumbrances for consideration. This is a discussion.
Would
Mary,
it
would
be
you like to-
would it be helpful for Mrs. Dollar to go through page 50 and 51, just to kind of,
Okay, so starting on page 50, you have your anticipated end-of-year fund balance report. Again, I'm going to stress it's anticipated. This is all estimated. We are still in May and still have bills to pay. So starting at the top, you have the 3.1 million is the beginning year fund balance. And then listed below that, you have our anticipated revenues, which will match up with page 51 in the anticipated column. And then you take the revenues plus your beginning fund year balance and less out our expenditures and our encumbrances to subtotal for your fund balance. And we've taken out our anticipated expenses, so that 102 matches the year-to-date report that we spoke about earlier, providing you with your anticipated unassigned fund balance of 1.3 million. Below that, we, back in 22-23, retained funds for to offset or to help offset the collective bargaining agreement for the 24-25 year and the 325,000. So we'll take that out, and we, during the budget process, promised that we would return 250,000 to the voters. So that's what that 250,000 represents, with a subtotal fund balance of about 734,000. Below that are the recommendations for you to consider and to hear about tonight, not to make any decisions on. We'll bring it back to you in June. Encumbrances for food service program that was discussed during the budget process. We removed that from the budget and said that we would look to take that from end of year fund balance. Do you want to go over these?
Curriculum,
There you go.
curriculum was reduced to 89,000 during the budget process, so we're hoping the board will consider restoring 50,000. Technology, we have reduced by 40,000, which is for electronic access. Everything is a subscription today. And we are also seeking 20,000 to support the switch project, so some additional funding for that project. Facilities was reduced substantially during the budget process, asking the board to consider 375,000. In keeping that fairly flexible, we will have a number of contractors on site during the summer that sometimes it makes sense to take advantage of, potentially more paving, more site work, roofing, HVAC. We have some good sized projects going on, and sometimes if you have somebody already on site, it is efficient to try to get to the next stage of some of those projects.
For that, we have Mr. Swanker.
He does an amazing job.
Other questions or comments? Again, we'll be acting on this in June.
And there's 194,000 plus that you could decide other ideas for too.
Or
Or return. And
return out 225, 26
correct,
at the
you
law.
could retain it to move it forward another budget cycle.
Any other questions or comments? We will be taking this on, and Mary did send us an explanation that she just told us last night for that. Moving on, we have the National FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America. Is that right? Awesome. Leadership Conference. Mrs. Moriarty.
So we have representatives from the FBLA here this evening, including Mrs. Sullivan, who is the advisor and our business education teacher at the middle high school. I'm going to turn things over to you, Mrs. Sullivan. And the students in attendance this evening know that they are doing a business presentation.
So I am Whitney Sullivan, the business teacher at the school and the advisor of FBLA, and I'm joined here today by 4 of the 5 students that are going to be attending nationals in Florida, and they're seeking the school board support in that. So if you want to introduce yourselves and come back around to me.
All right, so I'm Tyler. I'm Chris. I'm Hayden. I'm Brogan. All right, so we are seeking support for a trip to Orlando. It's from June 28th to I believe July 2nd. And on this trip, we're going to be doing leadership workshops, which helps us, get our business skills to be a little bit better. We're going to be networking with other FBLA students from across the country, and we're still rebuilding from COVID, and we have a new advisor, so we're excited to go to the National Leadership Conference again.
There's also a lot of preparation that goes into this stuff. competing against these very large schools like Phillips Exeter or Pinkerton or Goffstown. And being such a small school here, you have to do a lot of like ahead of time work. Even the advisors have to do a lot of work too, like with hotels and transportation. But for us, we have to do lots of time in office hours, cultivating our presentations that we're gonna compete with, or studying like a Quizlet for the test that we're gonna take there. And it's all stuff that like we have to do ahead of time.
So throughout the year, we've been working towards earning champion chapter recognition, which is sort of a way to reward chapters who work well in their communities and build good Laker spirit. In order to earn these points, we had to increase our membership, which we increased our membership substantially from last year. And we had to attend state leadership conferences, which we attended both the fall workshop and spring workshop, where we worked collaboratively with other schools and members of FBLA. And in addition to working like statewide, we also like kind of learned from what it takes to be an entrepreneur in New Hampshire through our field trip to the Lucky Dog, which we ate lunch at the Lucky Dog Tavern in Plymouth, and we learned like what it's like to run a business at a local level in New Hampshire. And in addition to like participating in community events, we also like helped like build on our school spirit by making pancakes in the morning and inviting other students to come eat breakfast with us, which we called buddy bagels, which we would bring a student in and teach them about business and eat breakfast at the same time. And throughout all these different acts of service that we completed, we earned Silver Champion chapter recognition, which we will be recognized with if we attend the National Leadership Conference.
I'm going to talk a little bit about our fundraising efforts. We had a dump day in the fall, and a portion of that money was donated to the Humboldt Runs Work. And then we also planned another dump day June 9th, and that's going to help supplement the cost of the National Leadership Conference. The money that was made earlier this year was also used for the Fall Leadership Conference that we went to, the lunches there, and then also the State Leadership Conference. It was also used for Hoko Coco, and it was also used for teacher appreciation donuts during FBLA week. In addition to fundraising, we also have outreach to local businesses, and they donate money. Some of those businesses include the Lucky Dog and Bolton Farms and Sal's Seafood and Hayward and Co. And Meredith Land. You're gonna close this off.
Yeah, I will take over. Sumner Mills is another student that is not here currently that plans to attend nationals. He's actually at orientation for his summer job right now at Bank of New Hampshire. So I actually have a little note from him, and then I'm going to take over the part that he would have covered for you regarding some of our sustainable fundraisers. So Sumner said, "This was my first year attending the State Leadership Conference. I gained so much valuable knowledge at the state and related to what I hope to do in the future. I think attending the national conference, we will be able to bring valuable knowledge to help our school and community better. We'll also be able to learn more about what other chapters across the country are doing and bring that knowledge back to the Interleaves community to use here. Thank you for your time tonight." So he was going to cover the sustainable fundraisers that we have. Since we are moving to ask for support from the school board, we just wanted to show that we're not looking for a free ride. We do have the fundraisers that we did this year, but also are anticipating in the future to have more fundraisers so that we can be better prepared financially if we qualify for nationals. Which this year, I would like to say we had 7 students qualify for nationals, which we mentioned some of the schools that are competing at the state level are really big schools and some really prestigious schools. It's not just the public schools in New Hampshire that can go, so we were competing against some pretty impressive students, and I think we performed really well when you consider the competition that we were up against. So we had 7 students that qualified, and then the Silver Champion Chapter recognition is also, in my humble opinion, really impressive for a school of our size. In order to level up one more to gold would require a lot larger chapter with a lot of students constantly trying to meet the challenges that are set for that. So really proud of the work that the students did this year to earn that recognition, both on the individual level at the state conference and also the Silver chapter. So for sustainable fundraisers, Sumner was actually integral in helping to start one of our fundraisers that we hope to have moving forward, and that is t-shirt printing. So I brought 2 of our shirts. So to kind of get the ball rolling this year, we kept it small to make sure that we could handle what we were signing up for. So we offered to do the shirts for the students for Winter Carnival. So usually each class will have shirts printed for when they do their lip sync competition up on stage. So this is the juniors class shirt. So essentially what we did was the juniors designed this, and then we order the prints, and we have a heat press in my classroom, and then FBLA comes to my classroom, and we print them, we press them, I guess. So this is an example of a heat transfer vinyl. So this is like full color, and it's kind of like a shiny, not quite as durable as a screen print, but cost-wise, they're great. So for this year, we, as a club, did a very small markup on these shirts because it was our first attempt at it, and we just wanted to kind of prove that we could do it and get the word out there. So it wasn't a huge moneymaker for us this year. I think we netted about $200 total. We also did the freshman class, and the freshman class had more of a true screen print. I unfortunately wasn't able to grab one of the freshman shirts. But this is an
May I ask
example.
a question about that?
Sure.
Of that inventory that you all made, how much of it did you sell? All of it, or?
All of the shirts were pre-ordered, so we sold everything.
Oh,
Yeah, so for example, the junior class has like 50-ish students.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what they do is they design the shirt and they order those shirts with class funds so that everyone in the class has one.
Gotcha.
And that's actually one of the benefits of this fundraiser is it kind of keeps funds within the district a little bit longer. So instead of them ordering from Body Covers or some other business outside of the school and then that money immediately leaves, it kind of keeps it in FBLA so it can be recirculated since it's in district and used again. So this is an example of the screen print. So there's a company that we just contracted through that does the screen print onto paper, and then we press it, and it is as durable as your traditional screen print if we had like the full like screen printing system where we were putting them on. So that was the back of the freshman class shirt. So it's a class of 27. So that's one of our sustainable fundraisers, and the other one, which we are in the process of establishing, is called United Script, which is a gift card fundraiser. It is a national organization, and essentially it is a gift card that you are able to purchase at any of a number of national retailers, and then a portion of that gift card purchase price is given to FBLA. So there are things like Circle K and Mobile on there, so you could buy a $100 gas card, you get a $100 gas card, FBLA gets $2. It's a small markup, or it's a small percentage, but it would definitely be one that would require some scale. But I think with our business ingenuity, we can figure out a way to kind of scale that so that in the future we have more funds available if we have such a successful year like we did this year where we had so many students qualifying for nationals.
That's great.
So, so we are humbly asking for the school board's support financially in sending us to Orlando, Florida for nationals, and we're hoping for approximately $5,500. And I do have a cost breakdown if you'd like to see what we're looking at as far as
That would be for the
costs go.
5?
Well, so it would be split among the 5 and the chaperone. So the total cost we're looking at is between $10,000 and $13,000-ish, depending on the cost for flights and hotels. FBLA requires us to use one of their approved hotels, and they range in price, so that's where there's a fluctuation depending on what's available still. And then the rest, we do have each of the students that are attending has already put forth a cash commitment to go of $750, and we have the other fundraisers that we are trying to squeeze in the next 6 weeks to have the funds to be able to go and comfortably enjoy ourselves.
Question for Brogan, not to put you on the spot, but you said you've grown your membership quite a bit. Do you have an idea of how much you've grown? Like, have you doubled or you've increased by 50%?
I don't have an exact
That's
number,
okay.
but yeah, we've added
Just-
quite a few senior members. So there was we had quite a big senior class last year who attended state leadership, and I think we filled like much of the remaining spots. We had like new positions that were being filled. Last year it was really just president and vice president, but this year we have president, vice president, and secretary, and social media chair. So like our group is kind of growing.
Great.
Yeah, as far as consistent attendance, I would say last year, consistent attendance, we probably had 10 to 12 students. This year, we're probably closer to 20 to 25 of students that are regularly coming to meetings, or at least checking in, trying to stay up to date and be involved in the club.
Any other members have questions?
Yeah, I have a quick
Jim?
question. I think this is great. This is, congratulations for you guys qualifying. It sounds like you're the top, only 6 of you are going and there's 25. You must have done something on top of that to qualify, so congrats. I have some fundraising ideas I can share with you.
Yeah,
after.
I
And
would
then
love to
also, you guys should go to the PTO meeting tomorrow night
Okay.
and ask for money.
Okay.
Because they gave a bunch of money to the Laker boss.
PTO.
And
Okay.
they have money, and they did some fundraising this year, and tomorrow night, I think, actually. So.
Okay. All right.
Other questions? This is our own local version of Shark Tank, so. So there, your ask is $5,500. Just as a reminder, that is the bar that we've already sort of have we already have an example where we did offer that up to DI, Destination Imagination. We were prepared to do it potentially to robotics if they had gotten to the point this year. For context for our new members here, like last year, we funded DI 15,000, I think. In robotics, we funded something less than that, but significant. But due to our budget situation, we have reined it back. There will also be, and we didn't get into it, but Mary and I have discussed in our fund balance conversation, perhaps creating some sort of activity funds. But I think it's too premature to even get into it tonight, but there's some legwork that needs to be done to figure out how that could get administered fairly and equitably. But that's a future thing. Anyway, so a little background. Yes, sir.
I would move to support this organization with a $5,500.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion or comments on this?
Keep doing the transfer station. It's a goal point.
It really is.
We try to not hit it every weekend.
I know you are.
A little intimidating, but.
And it works.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You guys did a good job. Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you
Solar.
very much. Well done.
Next up, we have a donation from Prescott Farm Naturalist in the Classroom Program. The amount of $4,000. Is this earmarked for any particular?
So this is for the naturalist, Prescott Farm Naturalist. So the donation of $4,000 is to offset the cost of the naturalist.
And that's one of our students going to Prescott?
No, that's actually a naturalist who comes to ILES and works with classes.
Got it.
It's very established.
The
Yeah,
donation, Charlie, just to clarify, it was from the Geraldine Foundation.
Okay, thank
Fountain
you.
Foundation, you're welcome.
Geraldine Fountain Foundation.
Yes.
And that's an ongoing, that's been happening for many years.
Yes. And they have donated for a number of years.
They have, it stopped for a few years.
And then it's
And now
restarted
it's started back up.
That's great. I would move to accept with great gratitude.
Seconded by Mr. Twaddell. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much, Geraldine Fountain Foundation. Nominations.
So we have administrator nominations this evening. You may want to do that after non-public.
Okay. And then we'll go right to policy.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask
Yes, sir.
for the definition of what is the procedure or whatever? So if we accept as a first reading, what exactly is that? I'm unclear
On policies.
So policies have 2 readings. So the first, sometimes people might suggest an edit that the board may talk about and decide to accept a policy for a first reading with an edit. And then the time in between is it also lets the public be aware that these policies are up for, review. And at the second meeting, then the board would be voting to approve those policies. So they would become then approved policies.
With the potential to edit at the second reading as well.
Correct.
I mean, in the second reading, you can say, as a part of our discussion, we can, and you can certainly, we can discuss it now, and this just puts it on the table.
Okay, yeah, no, my other question is are we looking at voting on these as a package or individual? Pass them all as individuals?
Sometimes it's one, sometimes the other.
Yeah, it's whatever. Often we'll have a whole host of them, and we can flag whichever ones we have concerns about.
So-
Either now or in second reading.
So you want to do these individually tonight, Ed? Or do you
I would
have
like
one
to.
in particular that you
I
want?
have in my mind significant, I think that the video and audio surveillance on school buses is not complete, as we talk about that. I think the student dress code is not complete. And I have questions about the ethics, but other than that.
So the other three you're good on?
The other three, okay.
So let's, I'll entertain a motion for vandalism, school bus safety program, and student fees, fines, and charges.
Pages do you have?
56,
56 is vandalism.
60, and then the last one was, I'm sorry. Was the last one?
School bus safety.
Was it student fees, fines, and
CEAA.
charges?
So video surveillance on school property, which doesn't match what's in the agenda, but that's the one that I'm concerned. So page 57.
That's when you want to discuss.
Yeah, I'd like to
right?
discuss that one.
Should we deal with the ones that you don't want to discuss, that there are no discussions?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
We do the vandalism, school bus safety program, and student fees, fines, and charges.
Yeah, I'm good with those.
Anybody want to make a motion to approve those three?
I would move to accept, for first reading, the policies on vandalism, school bus safety program, and student fees, fines, and charges.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we're gonna go back to do the video and audio surveillance on school buses first, which is policy EEAA.
So my
You said school buses, does it include school property?
So the policy in the back is for school property.
It
As
says-
defined in the agenda, it's on school buses.
Yeah,
So
it says school property at the title at the top of page 57.
yes.
That would be,
So I think I think it's a clerical error on
Yeah,
the
it
agenda, no
is.
big deal.
What is it? Is it the buses or is it the school that we're actually gonna be talking about?
Yeah, I think we're talking about school.
So it was,
it's both.
it was both that we were working on, but bus was going to go back to confirm whether or not we needed a public hearing for it.
Oh, that's right.
So I think it just got
Right,
mixed up. It should be video surveillance on school property.
okay.
My apologies on that.
But we anticipate buses as an issue that will come
Buses is
forward.
coming,
And it was
Yeah.
a procedural error, a question as to whether we would, but yeah, I think that's where the confusion is.
There's some specific guardrails for both.
Yeah. Well, one of my concerns here is, and, Mary, this is, I mean, it's obviously not written for you, it's written for your office.
Yep.
Right? Who is your designee? My question is, like, I have, like, arguably, you could designate the janitor, you could designate the newest pre-K teacher to authorize surveillance. So, like, I would
so
say that maybe.
that works primarily through our safety committee, which includes we have school administrators on that. We have school resource officers, and Mr. Parsons is on that, as well as Mr. Swanker. And so it's kind of looking at where we, as we look at our system, are there areas where we might be having trouble and we need to increase? That's kind of more specific, like there's an issue. Do we have a blind spot that we need to take care of? There's also the overall global, as we look over time, we've really increased the number of cameras we have significantly. And I don't have that number off the top of my head. I can certainly get that.
So maybe to back up, what's driving, has something changed that is driving this change to policy?
Actually, it's more what we have been trying to do with policy is really get closer and in alignment with how the New Hampshire School Boards Association, they have model policies. So I would say there's nothing different really. There's nothing significantly different in this policy than how we either have practiced or had previously written. We are trying to make our work more efficient by taking their model policies and really transitioning to them. So that's why there's so much red line.
Yeah. I would just say, as someone who sits on the policy committee, there are two things. One, there's an ongoing process of looking at historical policies and making sure that they fit reality. The other thing is, as Mary is describing, this process of harmonizing or seeking to be in harmony with the School Boards Association. That organization has a body of lawyers. They are up to date in legislative responsibilities of school boards. So there's a big advantage to us to have an organizational kind of framework that is in harmony with them. The policy committee looks at this and will say, their EEAA doesn't reflect our community values as elected representatives. So it's not that we're just going through, but in part it's really mundane. We've shifted from a numerical coding to this letter code system so that we all, when we're talking to the School Board Association lawyers, we can kind of
All be on the same sheet.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an ongoing process, and we're kind of wading through policy when there's new directives from the legislature, when issues come up with the community. So that's part of the process. I would also just mention, to some extent, in our policy, there are times when we refer to the superintendent or their designee as a way of protecting the school district if the superintendent is unavailable.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, to some extent, there's that. And then there's the question of what is the practice? And the practice, which doesn't bind us in policy, the practice is that the designee is always the safety committee or is always the assistant principal or the building principal. And, to some extent, it is by design that is not written in policy to give us the flexibility of if there's a reporting requirement and we can't get Mary on the phone and we can't get Amanda on the phone, is there someone else that they could authorize? So that's by design. If that gives you pause, we can discuss it as is.
I mean, I'm all about redundancy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I call it the hit by the bus crisis scenario, right?
Yeah.
Should Mary get hit by a bus?
Sure.
Who's the designee? Well,
Yeah.
who is the designee? Is it the safety committee, or is it Dr. Downing, or is it the janitor, or is it the newest pre-K teacher? And I think that I would like to know who that is, so that you establish who the designee is. Maybe the board approves it, maybe it doesn't approve it, but in any event, we know who that person is. So if the hit by a bus analogy does come to pass, or whatever kind of have a funeral, family emergency, whatever. Sure. Okay. Who it is? Who is it? Call them and get a decision. Done.
So that might be something that policy could look at. Maybe there's a way, again, without it getting mired in the process.
So the one issue is that the policy process involves this multiple meeting thing, first and second reading. So there is a practice to put the broad outline in policy and then have a practice that is supported by the board. And we can codify that to more or less over different issues. And I'm open to that discussion for us.
We certainly have. Policy is never done, it feels like laundry some days.
Yes.
But I think something that might be a goal is maybe for each policy that says designee, policy name, and then who the designees are, and then that can change depending on, as if positions change, their needs change. But it's certainly not something that we'll be able to turn overnight, but we will certainly, I think it's a good way to work on. I had talked with Heather Bullimore, who supports policy, about trying to, when some policies now require by law, the names are in the policy. And so we had a staffing change. And so we had gone through, but one had gotten missed. And one of the things that I think can help us organizationally is, again, just here are the policies that have names, so that we
Or
are
even,
able to double check
even
that.
if not named, duty positions.
Right.
Right,
Right.
so if the assistant principal of whichever building we're talking about is the designee, then he or she knows that, hey, I probably ought to get smart. If I assume this position, I probably ought to get smart on this policy and these kinds of things, and be prepared to make that decision in the event that.
Yeah, I think those are all good growth opportunities for us, so, something we can certainly work on.
The second issue I have is within paragraph 2, the third subparagraph there, the district will obtain copies of video recordings until they are erased. Well, I should hope so. Which may be accomplished by either deletion or copying. Like, I got that. So my question is how long are we until they're deleted?
So the
Like, what is
system, I believe it's 90 days it
90
holds
days.
them. But if something's been used in a disciplinary matter, then that is held until such time that you no longer believe you need it. So, things that are used either with personnel matters or student matters become personnel record potentially, or staff or student record.
I would suggest that it might be worthwhile for the public's knowledge, because these will be public documents, that we articulate 90 days within the policy. I would also ask the question, how are these recordings retained? You said earlier, everything is a service now, or words to that effect. What is if everything's a service, then everything's got a fee. So what's the fee? Is that being budgeted for? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of done. And who has access to it, blah, 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 blah.
Certainly, Honeywell is a big part of our system. And so we do pay fees to Honeywell. We can certainly try to pull some more information together.
Can we move that to first reading or?
I think those are, I don't understand the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think the process would be that in this section, or do we want to pull it back to policy?
Consideration, I don't know if we can move to first
Let's bring it back to policy then.
Sure, we can bring it back to policy.
Yeah,
And we'll
okay,
see
so
if we've
we'll
captured.
Bring that into that.
Try to capture it for the second.
No, for the first read. Well, so
Oh,
like going back to policy, this is
no,
not,
it goes
this is,
back to a
we're not
first reading.
considering this for
Gotcha.
first reading
Okay.
as Charlie and I are on the policy committee, right? So I think that's worth it. And we can,
Thank you for being on the policy
well.
committee.
yeah, we can look at that again.
Okay, we'll look at that again. Then let's,
While we're on this one, can I just, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah,
Just got a
please.
question about like how it relates to the buses. Are we kind of talking about that, or are we skipping the buses right now?
The buses come later.
we're skipping the buses because we had to look into whether we need to have, when we discuss them, a public hearing, a formal public hearing.
Okay, so I'll hold my questions related to
So
that.
school buses have audio
Mhm.
recording, which falls under wiretapping
Yeah.
laws. And when
Video
you-
without audio is a totally different
Yeah,
legal regime than audio or video with audio.
I'm actually, like what I do mostly for work too, so I'm deeply familiar with this.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm
what
sorry.
our question for school districts anyway, when you initially did a policy, you were required to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
And what I need
Okay.
to check is it every time it comes up, you have to have a public hearing, or is that only when you initially put that policy forward?
Gotcha, okay, yeah, I'll hold my questions really once it's.
All right. Next up, we have ethics. Policy GBEA. 4154.
I guess my biggest concern on this is, and maybe I'm too much of what I've done, right? But is there a periodic review? So what's to say that, I mean, I acknowledge that there are a series of crimes that if a certified licensed educator is arrested for, not convicted of, arrested for, they have 5 calendar days, if I'm not mistaken, to inform the district of what those are. The majority of those crimes seem to focus around sex crimes of some kind, whether it's pornography, trafficking, assault, or any of the number of other heinous things, all well and good. I don't think that those are the only things, not that I don't know, but I don't think that those are the only things that are out there that the board should consider or you should consider in renewing a contract or not renewing a contract or recommending for continuation or so on and so forth. What's to say something doesn't happen? You know, if I'm an educator and if I come up with 3 DUIs over my tenure, that all of a sudden is a felony. If I'm reading the ethics correctly, that's not a reportable offense because it's not one of those RSAs. However, I would think that the members of this board would want to know if a felon is an educator in the district, kind of thing. So, is there a periodic review of someone's? We do a background investigation when someone signs up to be a coach. We do a background investigation when someone signs up to be an educator. Do we do a periodic review?
So no, so background checks came into play in terms of requirements after even some of our employees were ever first hired. So there are some employees who were never background checked. And right now it is done when people initially take the position. So there isn't something that is every 3 years, people are going through that. You know, those are certainly things that I think I would want to make sure we consult with an attorney, a personnel attorney, just to follow up on that. But you know, that might be in process if you wanted, and maybe on the schedule when people are getting their credentials renewed, that every 3 years you're doing a background check. I know that in Ashland, we do that for volunteers, the volunteer process. Here it is right now, it's when people initially start volunteering. But again, that can certainly change as well.
My background is every 5 years. Yeah, like my previous life, every 5 years,
Yeah.
somebody's gonna come knock on your door and say, hey, do you know this guy? Is he suitable to hold and
Okay.
you know, in Alaska series? Is he suitable for the position that deals with national defense secrets? So,
Is there any state reporting that comes to you in Pennsylvania? We had a state report that anytime anybody was added to like a sex offender list or
Right, those are the
So-
Those are
mandatory
Right.
reporting.
Yeah.
Those
I'm
are,
not saying there are other issues.
so, what we
and
get
the
from the
local
state is when
police reported
somebody's,
DUIs too.
when somebody's license has
Yeah.
been revoked, we get that information. I've never been in a situation where it's one of the, you know, that reportable ones,
and here's
that
something
I've received anything from the state. I just haven't been in that. I don't know. I'm not sure that law enforcement is talking to the credentialing department and,
Right.
you know, getting back to us.
We did get the local police gave us reports of DUIs.
Okay.
It's like,
That does not occur.
Yeah.
So it's certainly, I don't know if you wanted to go back to policy for conversation and get a legal opinion. It might tie into what we're kind of talking about is the criminal background check policy. So it might be a way of,
Killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Excellent. Why don't we do that? Is everybody good with that?
Yep.
And then lastly, we have the student dress code.
I have to laugh, the number of conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I never make a boss where this is very vague and open-ended and, I mean, being a smart guy, whatever you want to call it, I guess arguably, you know, you could come to school wearing flip-flops and a jock strap, that could be okay. And
I don't think that would be okay.
That would absolutely not be okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's difficult, having,
That's my particular viewpoint, so it's, like, that's, so I'm being facetious, of course, but this seems to be not very detailed. I acknowledge that it's probably, like,
I speak to that.
please.
Go ahead, Amanda.
The dress codes, I think, are building based. They're also what would be considered to be age appropriate. So K through 12, the dress codes are gonna look very different. And I think that that's up to the educational leaders of each of those buildings to establish what would be considered a reasonable dress code for the age group that you're working with. And a lot of the time actually is a student-driven initiative. Like in our school, our dress code was something that was written by our student council and pushed through because the kids wanted more say in what they were and weren't allowed to wear to what was considered to be a pretty antiquated policy of dressing for modesty, which is, I believe, how this person is still written. And that's, I think, a more, if you dictate dress code and policy, then we better be real sure we have uniforms to help.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think this is like a framework of then what you're gonna
Correct.
be using at each individual school, so.
And I will say that the more specific you get, and I'm talking about middle high school kids here, the more specific you get, the more opportunity you give them for saying, well, it doesn't say jock straps.
Doesn't say jock straps.
So-
Doesn't say flip-flops.
You do not want to be that specific, and it just, that's my
Well,
experience.
my concern is really is the deletions take out racist statements, the deletions take out drug paraphernalia and so on and so forth. And I mean, you could argue if I'm wearing peyote is awesome, you're gonna say,
What it says in the policy though is that at the building level, which I don't believe that was struck out, is that the building levels will establish
building
what is
principal shall show district chair.
correct. And then
School standards, right?
each building will have their own dress code guidelines that have to be adhered to.
And that's
I
what we
would say
put back,
that
those things.
probably needs a little bit more emphasis. Because, you know, I've read this 3 times, I don't think.
which line are you on? I'm sorry.
Building paragraph
Right here,
3,
Mary.
Shall,
Building
building
principal
principal shall
shall.
ensure, okay.
like, I don't think that's clear to.
You know, maybe if you
I think
for
this is
policy.
the kind of thing that doesn't have to go back to policy. I think if we can read
That's
this
fair.
and we can add some lines and
Okay.
between first and second,
Yeah.
and
So
I would be comfortable with moving this forward.
strengthen
So
that
is
section.
a motion?
Yeah, I moved to,
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any more conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up, we have correspondence, of which I don't believe we have any.
Only the Cape Cod and Boston, which
Which
you
are-
distributed.
It is now 7:08. Mr. Parsons, do we have any electronic public comment?
No, sir.
Yes, sir. Amanda, would either of you like to say anything this evening? All right, I'm closing public comment at 7:08. I would entertain a motion now to go into non-public session per RSA 91A:3 2C. This includes matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of this board unless such a person requests an open meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second. All right. Duncan, would you please do the roll call?
we're voting to go into non-public. Aye. Mr. Toda? Aye. Ms. Farmer? I vote affirmative. Mr. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Hanson?
Very
We're in
good.
non-public session.